We start with Arizona School Superintendent Kathy Hoffman. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the news of the week. What is your reaction to President Biden's proposed mandates on private businesses to get their employees vaccinated?
Well, I think we wouldn't even be in this position of the president needing to implement these types of mandates if we weren't still faced with the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I am pleased to see that he is taking strong action. We've seen across the country, especially right here in Arizona, the number of, seeing the capacity of our hospitals, looking at the number of people who have tragically died from COVID-19, seeing what's happening in our schools with the outbreaks. So I am glad that he is taking strong action.
How concerned are you about what this says about federal overreach and how far that might extend beyond even things like COVID mandates?
Well, to me, this is an issue of health and safety and protecting Americans across the country. I think I think he waited as long as he could, again, to implement this type of mandate. I think this was more of a last resort for President Biden. But I do think that we've come to that point when we look across the country, when it's threatening our economy, it's threatening the stability of our schools to be able to offer in-person instruction, where we're still seeing tragically, just so many people especially those who are unvaccinated, who are dying from COVID-19. And I'm really worried about the number of kids who are in our hospitals who are also sick with COVID-19.
Now, there's also an education piece to the Biden plan. The president called on governors to mandate COVID-19 vaccines for teachers and school staff. Given his track record, Governor Doug Ducey will not do that. I think it's safe to say that. But if he could, would you support vaccine mandates in our schools for staff?
Well, that's actually something that we'll be looking at is with this new policy from the federal level. Arizona is a state that has an OSHA approved plan. So this may impact Arizona, whether or not Governor Ducey wants it to. And I feel very concerned that Governor Ducey has been downplaying the severity of COVID-19 and the pandemic in our state. Although he says he supports vaccines, every time you push back on these types of policies, he's basically saying that this is not serious, and he's giving a underlying message that he does not support the vaccine. So I feel like it's doublespeak, and it's very confusing for the constituents of Arizona.
So I want to understand what you're saying about the OSHA rules, because the president is going to put much of this in place through OSHA, the Workplace Safety and Health Administration. How does OSHA play into what our school districts do?
So I don't have all the details today, but Arizona is a state with an OSHA-approved plan. We're one of 26 states that falls into this category of having an OSHA-approved plan, and so that does mean that our schools, all of our public employees, do have to adhere to OSHA regulations. So I know they still have to go through a rulemaking process, but this is something we're going to be examining in the coming weeks, and it very likely will have a direct impact on our public schools.
Now, the federal government would also backfill money that governors like Doug Ducey are threatening to withhold from school districts that impose mask or other COVID mandates. Are you aware of any districts that have been told they will lose money?
Well, they have not been told directly that they will lose money, but the governor has been setting up different types of grants using federal funds to incentivize schools to not have mask mandates, to not have quarantine policies in place. And just to paint a picture of what this looks like and the impact of this on our school communities, yesterday I was on a call with local education leaders, and one of them shared with me that a trend that they're starting to see is that if a child is sent home to quarantine because of a well-documented case of close contact to someone who's positive with COVID, so the school has determined that this child is at risk for COVID-19, so they send the child home to quarantine, but then parents are unenrolling their child from the school and enrolling them in a different school to avoid the quarantine policy. And that is the exact type of policy that Governor Ducey has incentivized with his grant program, this voucher program, where essentially the state will be using federal funds to pay families to unenroll their child from a school that has a quarantine policy in place. This is putting the health and safety of that student at risk, as well as anyone else that they are exposing. To me, it's illogical. It's reckless. I can't understand how this is preventing the spread of COVID-19 and helping to keep our schools open.
And so, to be clear, you're saying these administrators are saying the students, the parents are unenrolling their child from a public school and putting that child in a private school and taking advantage of these $7,000 grants, or are they just school shopping, period?
They're school shopping. They're going from public school to public school in the case that was shared with me yesterday, because this was actually a rural educator where they don't have a lot of private school options. And this grant funding that this program the governor's created, it can be used for other types of expenses, not just private school tuition. It could be used for transportation, for tutoring, for other types of before or after care expenses. So in this case, it was public school to public school, but again, just completely reckless and really endangering the health and well-being of our students.